In today's video, the question that begs to be answered comes from Matthew. What is the best opening for black if your opponent is a d4 player? Well, Matthew, first of all, there is no one perfect opening in the world or the greatest opening response to one d4. But I can still help. You see, it all depends on your style of play and choosing an opening that you best understand or an opening that represents your style of play very well. But anyways, let me just give you my top recommendation against the Queen's Pawn game, which is the semi-Slav defense. This is Coach Kasper featured on Ask Chess GPT. Of course, at this point, you don't know exactly what white is up to. Let's say if they want to play the Collet system or the Queen's Gambit, or even the accelerated London system, you are not sure. So that's why it's always advisable for black to start with knight f6. And from here, there are three common moves that you're going to see most of your opponents playing. Number one, pawn to c4, kind of the Queen's Gambit setup. Number two, knight f3, maybe trying to go into the Collet system. And number four, bishop f4, either the accelerated London system or the normal London system with knight f3. And that's why knight f6 is such a flexible move to begin with. Now, suppose white starts with c4. What I would recommend any beginner or an intermediate level player to play in this position is d5, known as the Marshall defense, Queen's Gambit declined. The whole purpose of playing this move is to transpose the game into the semi-Slav with the move pawn to e6. Hold on, the semi-Slav defense is just an opening response to the Queen's Gambit that involves this triangle of pawns on the center. If white takes on d5, you always want to take with your e-pawn to open up the e-file for your king's rook. This is where your rook will stay in the middle game. Most of the times, white players don't take. Instead, you might see them playing the moves Queen c2 or pawn to e3. Of course, we're going to talk about bishop g5 later. So against pawn to e3 or queen c2, what I recommend is to continue with your normal development as highlighted and castle short. It's always safe to begin with your knights first, developing your knights first before bishops, because that's what white is also doing, right? Yep. So after something like queen c2, this is when you play bishop d6. This is the semi-Slav defense mainline. Why do you want to play bishop d6 very soon? Well, you just want to have full control on the e5 square earlier on. As you can see, three of your pieces are all guarding the e5 square so that white doesn't occupy it. Say after bishop d3, this is when you can either castle short or start pawn storming right away with the move pawn to e5. Hence the reason why you played bishop d6, to be quick with this move before white wakes up. But anyways, you don't really have to play pawn to e5 after white develops their light squared bishop. I was just trying to show you the whole purpose of playing bishop d6 by move number 7. So in this case, after bishop d3, the safest you can do is to castle short, which is the top played move in the master's database. And after white does the same, that's when you go pawn to e5, or first of all take on c4. Sometimes we like taking on c4 immediately after white develops their light squared bishop. Like back on move 7, when white played bishop d3, if we wanted, we would have taken on c4 like this, so that after bishop takes, this is when we go pawn to e5 to oversimplify the game like this, where white takes on e5 and then you take back, and after castle short, you castle short as well. Look how fixed your pawn structure is. Again, after bishop d3, you may consider to take on c4, so that after bishop takes, instead of playing e5, you go pawn to b5 right away. This is acceptable in the semi-Slav as it is the only sensible way you can develop your light squared bishop on b7. For example, after the bishop goes back to d3, you first play a6 to protect your b5 pawn like this, and after castle short, you go bishop b7. Your light squared bishop will be a monster bishop in the long run along this diagonal. Now you might be thinking, what happens if white plays pawn to e4? Well, remember this bishop you played on d6 back on move 7. Well, think of this as a key piece in the semi-Slav as it supports the move pawn to e5. Once again, after d4, you just think of going knight f6. to see what white is up to before you choose an opening to go with. Speaking of the semi-Slav, you can also start with d5 if you are sure that your opponent is going to play the Queen's Gambit. The whole idea is to go pawn to c6 and then later on transpose to the semi-Slav with pawn to e6. From here, your move sequence will be knight bd7 followed by bishop d6. Very important sequence to always remember. So you start with the knights first and then your dark squared bishop to prepare for e5 should white think of playing e4. But not too fast. Sometimes even in this position, white may play bishop g5. Against this bishop g5 move, my top opening recommendation is the Cambridge Springs. Just think of playing knight bd7 first and then queen a5. With queen a5, you are pinning white's knight to the king and you are ready to go knight e4, putting more pressure on this knight. For example, if queen c2, you can simply go knight e4, which also attacks the bishop, also putting more pressure on this other knight. Look at this. If bishop d3, for example, white is losing due to knight takes g5, and after knight takes, you simply take on c4 with your d-pawn. Two of white's pieces are under attack and there's nothing white can do to save both. This is the whole idea of the Cambridge Springs. If they play knight f3, there's a high chance they might play the Colles system as shown on the board, but anyways, you still want to go d5 so that again if they play c4 you go back to the semi-Slav defense. If bishop g5 later, you transpose to the Cambridge Springs after knight bd7 and queen a5. But if they play a move like e3, now you know that they want to play the Colles system and there's little or no chance that they are going to play the Queen's Gambit setup. So what you want to do against the Colles system is to play the reverse Queen's Gambit yourself. Beginning with the move c5, you develop your Queen's Knight, you play e6, you play bishop d6, and then you castle short. That is the reverse Queen's Gambit declined. Lastly, after d4 and knight f6, a neutral move, trying to see what white is up to. If they play the accelerated London system, which is currently the Indian defense, you can still play d5, c6, e6, bishop d6 and castle short. That's fine. If you want to watch the full version of this video, simply head over to the comment section and click on the first link that will take you to a YouTube channel called Ask ChessGPT that sponsored this video and invited me to speak. Also, be sure to support them by subscribing and sharing the video. For now, thank you for watching.
Welcome to Ask ChessGPT. This is the place where you can submit all your chess-related questions, whether it's about openings, chess traps, puzzles, or tactical problems, and receive quick answers in the form of short videos. To ask your questions, simply head over to our partner's Patreon page by clicking the link on our YouTube homepage. Join the free membership to start posting your chess questions, and we'll do our best to answer the most interesting and engaging ones in a short video, plus give you a shout-out. For those who want priority responses and more frequent shoutouts, you can also subscribe to our partner's Patreon page with a paid membership. Here's how to ask your first question. After clicking the link on our YouTube homepage and setting up your free membership account on our partner's Patreon page, go to the Community tab. Agree to the chat guidelines, then navigate to the Ask ChessGPT chat. Type your chess question, like this one. How do I checkmate my opponent in the opening stage in 2 moves? In response, you might get something like this. To checkmate your opponent in 2 moves, assume you're playing black and your opponent opens with the Barnes opening by playing f3. After this weak opening move, you can push your pawn to e5. If they follow up with another poor move, like g4, you can checkmate by playing queen h4, winning the game in just 2 moves. And that's it. We look forward to hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe to help us grow and continue improving our content.